we could rename the show Thank God It's Cullen, because it's Friday and it's time, to school some of the social media dopes who are trying to manipulate the information that people get to see. How are you, John?
I'm well. How are you, Jason? Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I'm doing well. I've been thinking about you this week because every day they've been saying, we're breaking new coronavirus records with the number of people who are getting it and whatever. Is any of that correct?
Well, that's what the topic of today's show is. We're going to do some fact checking, and we're going to fact check Twitter and Facebook. And the reason that we're doing that will become evident in just a minute or so. But it's been a big week. You've had a big week. I've had a big week. You've had some big interviews. I had some big breaks this week. This was the week that I submitted my Nobel Prize for Medicine thesis. And it appears that I'm a shoo-in. And so on the Johnny...
Explain to us how you were able to do that.
Yeah, so it's a really remarkable opportunity. So I put together a hypothesis and published it and have submitted it to the Nobel Prize Committee for Medicine.
You're not kidding.
I think I'm a shoo-in for it, quite frankly. If you look at the presentation I did, John Cullen wins Nobel Prize for Medicine. Quite frankly, I mean, the women who just won the Nobel Prize for Medicine won it for CRISPR, right? And that's old news, right? We've had CRISPR now for years, and they just won. The hypothesis that I put forward in this video, no one has put forward anywhere in the world, and the evidence is all there. It's all in the presentation, and I have a hard copy of it. So it is a real document, and I built on a hypothesis that was developed by the CDC. So the CDC developed a hypothesis saying influenza appears to have disappeared in Australia and in Chile and in South Africa. And
Really?
based on the research that we've been doing, I said, and then what? You guys went to lunch and forgot what you were working on? Because that's just the tip of the iceberg. It turns out influenza has been eradicated from planet Earth and does not exist anywhere except for Cambodia. And you can learn all about it in this video. That one of the surprise benefits of coronavirus is that influenza has been eradicated from the planet like smallpox. And my hypothesis has been submitted to the Nobel Prize Committee for Medicine. And quite frankly, I don't think anybody else stands a chance. I think this is one of the biggest revelations of the last 100 years.
I feel like you're being sarcastic. Not the case?
No, not at all. If you look at the evidence...
How could influenza be eradicated?
I'm not the guy who's providing that answer. I don't know how it happened. But the evidence is irrefutable. There's no influenza except in Cambodia. So I put that video out this week. That was a huge watershed moment. And I'm looking for, I need to get a recommendation from you. I think I know where I can get a tux. I don't know where I can get a top hat. So if you know a good a hatter, I'm going to need a top hat for the event. And I'd love for you to be there. All right. And then after that break this week, the second big break was on the Gilan Maxwell deposition. So finally, the judge ordered to release the Gilan Maxwell deposition.
Right.
Well, did anybody read it?
I looked at it briefly. It seemed to contain information that we already know about that nobody went to jail over.
Well, but there's an aspect of it. It's over 400 pages long, the deposition. And there's an aspect of it towards the end that no one has reported on, except for on the Johnny Hoover channel. And this is where the attorney from Boies Schiller asks Gilan Maxwell, point blank, if Jeffrey Epstein worked for the CIA.
And what did she say?
And you'll have to watch that video. And then she also goes on to start asking Gilan Maxwell about working for Israel and trips to Israel. Now, it's one thing when a YouTube channel brings it up and suggests that this guy's CIA. It's another thing when one of the top attorneys in the country, working for Boies Schiller, brings it up in a deposition. And so this is a break that no one else has had. And I broke this video yesterday.
Do you know if Jeffrey Epstein had any relationship with the U.S. government, either working for the CIA or the FBI in his lifetime? Confidential. It says the answer is objection to the Foreman Foundation. I have no knowledge of that. Do you know if Jeffrey Epstein has any friends in the CIA or FBI? Objection to the Foreman. Right. That's her lawyer. I have no idea.
Right. So all this is in the video. And this, I think, is the only place on the internet or anywhere that you're going to hear this level of detail. And this deposition was done in 2016. So again, this is a very famous attorney who is deposing Gilan Maxwell. And
she says, I don't recollect him telling me he worked for the government. These are carefully selected answers that she can't be. She says, I don't recollect. I mean, how are you going to forget a trip to Israel?
Right. Well, exactly. So that's why I made the video. And the audience can go check that video out at the Johnny Hoover channel. That's not the subject of tonight's show. That's yesterday's news. All right. So Nobel Prize on Wednesday, Gilan Maxwell on Thursday.
That's good.
And yeah, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to do something called the fact-checking masterclass. And it seems that it's really necessary. It seems that Facebook and Twitter in particular are struggling with fact-checking. And it seems like they don't really know how to do it. And that's not a big surprise. So in tonight's show, I am going to take the lectern and I am going to demonstrate fact-checking as done by an adult. And you'll get to see what fact-checking looks like when somebody knows what they're doing. All right. So why don't we go to the deck and I'll show you guys a little bit of, we'll kind of set up where this is going. I'll give you an example or two before we go to our patron-only hour. And in the patron-only hour, we got some real deep stuff that you guys can share. And this is kind of the thing I think the audience needs to take into consideration here. The reason that Laura Ingraham tweeted one of my charts is because one of our listeners reached out to her. Okay. Somebody who watches the show is a friend of hers and reached out to her and said, you got to see this stuff. So the question to the rest of you, what are you doing? Who are you reaching out to? Who are you sending these materials to? Because it does matter. It does count. If you send these links to people, it counts, it matters, and people take notice. So please accept our invitation to be deputized and spread the word. Okay?
Yeah. I mean, this was stunning data that you brought forward, John, and it's not like this is some study that you did. You just went and downloaded the CDC's data. This is their data. So we're told by some of these same people that you're going to be schooling today that if we question their data, we could get slammed and deleted from the internet. But if we publicize their data, is that okay?
Well, I mean, that's the big question, right? I mean, that's what we're all trying to figure out here is what's okay, what's not okay. Right. And that's, that seems to be the mystery. So look, let's go to the deck and let me show you guys sort of why we're doing this. And, we'll kind of establish the baseline here. So first of all, Facebook, right? So Facebook is, what's it say? Facebook is now officially censoring the New York Post's Biden bombshell, right? So that happened a couple days back, a week or so ago. And so they're censoring stuff. And then if we go to the next page in the deck, we know that Twitter has been charged with spying for the Saudis and all kinds of stuff, and Twitter's cracking down on the president. If you go to the next slide, a week ago we talked about this, that when the president sent out this tweet, that Twitter's jumping all over him. They banned Kayleigh McEnany, who's the press secretary for the White House. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Are these guys doing fact checking, or are they simply calling it fact checking? Right? You can't just put mustard on a hot dog, call it filet mignon, and have it be filet mignon. It's not. It's a hot dog. So are they doing fact checking or not? Let's take a look. Let's go to the next slide. At YouTube, we know that they're banning any misinformation about the coronavirus vaccine. And I'm not sure how we figure out what is misinformation, what's not, but they're going to ban it, right? So that's, we know that. Now let's go to the next page. And on the next page, what we have is something that Zach shared with us when he came on the show. I guess it was about a year ago or so. So Zach Voorhees from Google, part of his trove of documents had to do with the algorithm bias that they were, documenting over there. So these issues are coming up. I'm sure that Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are all struggling with these issues, right? How do you navigate through these waters? What do you do? Right now, they're getting subpoenaed. Right now, they're going to have to appear in front of the Senate. Right. So when your boss gets subpoenaed to speak in front of the Senate,
something's up.
That probably means you didn't do your job right. Okay. Right. When I worked at Oracle, Larry never got subpoenaed to speak to the Senate. We didn't screw up that bad. Right. There was nothing we did that, they had to talk to Larry. So this is not good. And it's happened more than once. Okay. All right. So let me give the audience a sample question of what we're going to do tonight when we do some fact checking. Okay. So here's a sample, and I'm going to pose this question. I'm going to show you how we do fact checking using this. I'm going to do it right now live in front of everybody. So let's go to the next page in the deck. Okay. Here's a sample question. I'm going to go through a bunch of these tonight. When we go to our patron-only hour on Subscribestar and Patreon, I have a bunch of these that are like a test. All right, so here's a sample question. More than half of the people that work at Facebook are not scientifically considered adults. Is that true or false?
I think that's true.
Okay. Now, if you were to tweet that and send out a tweet that said, more than half of the people that work at Facebook are not scientifically considered adults, and make it a declarative statement,
oops,
you might be in trouble.
Yeah.
You might be. All right. So now let's fact check this and find out, is this true or not? All right. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. So the answer is it is true. Now, how do we determine that? Well, we use science. We go and we do research, and we go find research that says that people are not fully developed mentally until they've reached their 30s. And we have a whole bunch of documents on this that we've shown on the show before, that the brain does not develop into its adult form until someone reaches their 30s. Okay. Bunch of research on this, and you guys can do this offline, but there's a whole bunch of articles and studies on this. All right, so now you take that, which is now known and documented, and we set that aside here. Now we go to the next page. And how do we know that more than half of the people that work at Facebook are not scientifically considered adults? Because we find further research. And the further research tells us the median age of the people that work at Facebook. And according to Business Insider, the median age of people that work at Facebook is less than 30. So that means that more than half of the people at Facebook do not have scientifically developed adult brains. Now, that's a bit controversial. And I'm sure it aggravates half or more than half of the people at Facebook that I'm calling them children. But that's not me. It's science, right? People are not full adults until their 30s. Scientists say, not John Cullen. This isn't my theory. I'm just putting two bits of data together. And by marrying these two bits of data, we have achieved deductive reasoning that is irrefutable. This is not a theory. This is a fact. If the median age at Facebook is still less than 30, this data comes from 2017. I have no reason to believe that they've started hiring older people. So
Well, the
if the
people
median
working there maybe got older.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. You retire at 30.
Yeah.
So if the median age is less than 30, we know that more than half of the people at Facebook do not have what is considered an adult brain. And because of that, I'm going to teach you how to do this. So this show is for the people at Facebook and the people at Twitter who are not yet 30. And what you have here is a guy who is over 30 who's going to teach you how to do fact checking, because you guys obviously don't know how to do this yet. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So this is the key tweet. This is the tweet that Twitter jumped on from the president, saying flu season's coming up. Sometimes over 100,000 people, despite the vaccine, die from the flu. We know that Dr. Fauci had the flu despite getting the vaccine. And the president said that in most populations, it's far less lethal. All right, so let's go to the next page in the deck and see what we've got there.
Do you think Trump is watching the show and commenting on some of the data you've brought forward?
I don't know if he's watching the show. I doubt he has time, but I'm guessing someone in his circle is relaying the pertinent data to him, yes. Someone in his circle is relaying it. Yes.
Did you notice last night he said that New York City is like a ghost town? Now, of course, I didn't invent the term ghost town, and it might occur to anybody, but I have done for 7 months a recurring series called Ghost Town NYC. Perhaps the president has seen at least one episode.
Yeah, one of the doctors that Laura has on her show earlier in the week talked about Dr. Fauci being referred to as crimes against humanity, and use that term, which we've used here on the show quite a few times. So I want the audience to understand. A lot of people sometimes comment, nothing's ever going to happen.
Right.
Not this time. Not this. People are up to here, powerful people. And I'm seeing more and more doctors are subscribing to my Patreon channel now to get these charts.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I've got I got about half a dozen new patrons that are doctors that are subscribing to get all these charts, because I keep putting the charts up on the Patreon channel.
That's great.
And a lot of guys want to get them. So here's the question to the CDC, and this is really the direction we're going to go with the rest of these true-false statements that so this is something, if you put on Twitter, would they block you even though it's correct, right?
But it's the CDC put it on Twitter.
Well, that's the question. So the CDC says in this tweet that 22,000 people died from the flu. Is that true or false?
Seems false, because it was a lot more.
Well, so now does Twitter fact check the CDC? If you fact check the president, why don't you fact check the CDC? Is there a reason for that?
Well, they're just accepted as true by Twitter and Facebook.
But the president is not. So the president is not accepted as true. CDC is. I'd like an explanation of that, please.
Yeah.
Who else do we accept as true? Everything Mike Pompeo says? Do we accept everything he says?
Well, it's apparently anything negative about Trump is accepted as true, and anything negative about anyone who opposes Trump, no matter how much evidence there is to support it, is dismissed as a waste of time by NPR. They don't want to waste your time with Hunter Biden information at NPR.
This is the question, right? So right here, right now, we are giving the Senate the questions they need to be asking Jack. Jack, why don't you fact check a post from the CDC, but you do fact check a post from the president? Is that a double standard or is it not? Okay. Now, if the CDC is wrong with this post, what are we supposed to do about it, the people? If I want to challenge the CDC and I say 22,000 flu deaths, I think you guys got your math wrong. I think you're missing at least 10 at minimum. Something's wrong.
Wait a minute. Aaron D. raised an interesting point. He says 22 is a master number. I don't know what that means, but he's talking about 2020. That's interesting. They do like these weird number messages.
I know that in the estimate that they provided back in April, the number was 24 to 61,000 was the estimate in April. It was 24 to 61,000, and we came in at 22. So that's delightful. All right, so the question again is, if the CDC posts incorrect data, how do we challenge that? How do we fact check the CDC? And why is Twitter not fact checking the CDC? And what am I supposed to do when I find out that Twitter's wrong?
Post it on Facebook?
Well, and they'll say, I'm not allowed to do that. Now, they're starting to pick up. So the news is starting to report that fatalities are dropping. We've been reporting this here on this channel for quite some time. Since August the 1st, in the United States, week over week, fewer people are dying every week. So what you're hearing on the news is antithetical to the actual data regarding people dying. And that's what I'm concerned with. I'm not really concerned with people getting sick. Let's go one or two more slides. We're going to have to wrap it up and go to our patron-only hour. But so what we're going to do when we go patron-only, we've got a whole bunch of true or false type tests to do fact-checking with Twitter, with Facebook, based on their guidelines. So this is the set of guidelines from Facebook on how they're working to keep people from getting misinformed. Well, you have to do your fact checking if you're going to fact check, kids, right? You can't just, what was the movie Sleeper with Woody Allen, where they just walk around the room and say, clone the nose, clone the nose, clone the nose, and the nose is cloned? It doesn't work like that, kids. You can't just run around and go fact check, fact check, fact check. Okay, we did our fact checking. You have to actually do the work. And that's what we're going to do tonight on the show. I'm going to show you how to do this and how we confirm the things that we say.
But John,
how do we?
What if, for instance, you're, I don't know, thinking of the stupidest person I can think of, maybe Andrew Cuomo. Does he have to fact check anything? He seems to be able to post all types of nonsense on Twitter.
He's the first one. Yeah, he's the first example. So the first question in the test is regarding the number of people dead in New York versus Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Mongolia, Laos, Myanmar, and Bangladesh combined. Who has more dead? And we're going to get into some of these facts, and we're going to make sure that Andrew Cuomo understands that he has to take responsibility for the 33,000 people that died in New York. And that nowhere on earth compares to New York. Nothing.
What about the fact that his dope brother is getting in trouble for not wearing a mask, and he's telling everybody to wear masks? Did you hear about that?
Well, the question with masks, of course, was that the secret to success in Laos? Is that why no one's dead? Is that why no one's dead in Cambodia? Is because of their remarkable mask wearing? Did they do something? Do they have better masks than we do? Is their social distancing 9 feet instead of 6 feet? Is that why nobody's dead in Laos and Cambodia?
But this is what comes up when I put in Laos and masks. Perhaps we should be wearing these if we want to stop the spread. I think Cuomo would look good in one of these.
What we did. Right. So they may tell you this is what we did, but nobody's asked. Nobody's asked Laos. Nobody's asked Cambodia. Cuomo's too proud to pick up the phone. And he's got more people dead in Brooklyn, than they do in, major countries with millions of people. And it's just absurd. So in tonight's show, we're going to get into fact checking. We're going to look at Cuomo. We're going to look at some of the specifics. And where do I go to check these facts? We're going to go to the databases at the CDC. I'm going to show you how I get the data. And I'm going to give the audience tweets. These are things you can put out there to create havoc, make people think, right? And that's what we're going to do tonight. And I think you're going to enjoy it. And in the meantime, I appreciate everybody voting for me for the Nobel Prize for Medicine. Yeah. And I'm really grateful, and I'm looking forward to that reception. It really should be special.
Well, I wonder if you win,
I got to find out if I can bring my cat. I got to find out if I can bring my cat.
Do you have a cat? If you win, I wonder if you'll have to go to dinner with Robert David Steele.
Why? What the hell does he have to do with it?
He claims to have been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, but yet no viable evidence other than documents he's created himself seem to support that.
No.
It was a matter of issue in our lawsuit. I do want to remind people before we transition over to the sponsor exclusive segment on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. I want to remind people to subscribe to the John E. Hoover YouTube channel. That is John's free YouTube channel, and you can watch simulcasts of our broadcasts together on there. You can also review his video about Ghislaine Maxwell's Deposition, where she doesn't seem to be able to remember too much, as well as all the other videos that he does. People can also sponsor this channel by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be back with our sponsor exclusive hour of John Cullen Investigates in less than 5 minutes. So we'll see everybody over there. And you are supporting independent news by becoming sponsors of what we're doing. If you like the information that we share, please become a sponsor. We can't do this without your support and sponsorship.